2, 1. All right, we are officially live. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel.
Jose.
Rohi.
We skipped the last names today.
We did today.
You guys
First
off,
name
little
basis.
curveball. Well, we're so famous at this point that everybody knows who we are. We could, we don't even really have to say our names anymore. Well, anyway, gentlemen, we're going to calibrate the tongues today, and I got a question from the stack of questions submitted by all of our viewers. We got hundreds of questions. We promise to get to all of you. Which kind of humor do you never enjoy?
Okay. Maybe some sarcasm,
Never?
I never enjoy it. And when you say never, it just depends how it comes across, right? So a lot of the times, people that are sarcastic, they want to be funny, but at the same time, there's something behind it, right? So that's it's not that I don't enjoy it. I just don't. I don't find it very amusing.
Okay.
You know what I'll say? Like, especially some of the comedians, probably in the later '90s stuff with the really just harsh language and just kind of out there, and you're really just trying to find out why does it take 10 F-bombs to deliver a message. I think that's kind of one of those things where just get to the point. You can be funny without having to say all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think I'm kind of in line with you. I don't, sarcasm, it's kind of everywhere, to say I never, appreciate sarcasm. I appreciate a good, sarcastic comment, but it does make you feel uncomfortable sometimes in certain situations. So, but yeah, to the comedy, I would say for me though, it's when people are a little too, aggressive with it. So right in line with the language, you use it in the comedy stuff, but sometimes people are a little offensive and you're like, gosh, calm down,
Yeah.
And especially when you're kind of in a public setting and there's, maybe a table right next to you and it's kind of there's kids over there, so
No,
got to kind of tone it down a little.
To that point, I think it depends on the audience that you have, right? Because if you go back to comedy from George Carlin, I mean, this guy was very political, but at the same time, he dropped a lot of F-bombs. And he captivated your attention just because of what he said, right? He was actually driving it somewhere.
Yeah.
But he had to use all these F and F and F and F and to get to that point, right? And you're strong on that. You're wanting, well, deliver the punch. And it was never really a punch. It was more like he's leading you down this narrative that's going to make you think a little, and then essentially you may get a laugh at the end.
Yeah.
But it's delivered with all these F-bombs.
We're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I opened my iPod case and then my phone. Just making sure I didn't take over the audio. Yeah. So, what was I gonna say? I threw myself off right there.
We were at the George Carlin. I'm not sure if you know.
He's like, comment on what I just talked about for sure. Speaking of humor and being inappropriate at times, I mean, Jose and I, we're, usually at the golf course and, we'll, say some dumb stuff, Well, recently there was there's been a lot of high school golf players at the golf course, and I had to compliment one of the coaches. I had to say, hey, every player of yours that I've met out here, I small talk them and, hey, I try to engage them and encourage them and, just kind of let them know hey, you're welcomed here. And they've all been super respectful, just very kind, respectful. They're, engaging in the conversation, responding, enthusiastic. Thank you, sir. All that good stuff. And I was like, man, that's cool. And the coach, I know him for some time now. He's like, yeah, well, you should hear these knuckleheads when they get together. They're goofballs. And I said, hey, we're all goofballs when we get together. When you got that group of friends and you're just hanging out, all of a sudden it's like everything just becomes lax and you just kind of speak freely. But it's like knowing when to turn it on and off is key, right? And I commended those kids for understanding that at a young age. Like, okay, look, I can't always be like this. I have to know how to shake a hand and speak properly. And I thought that was pretty neat. So wanted to give a shout out there.
Well, then maybe that segues to the personas that we are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is a good topic because we'll lead into what we came to talk about here. But think about it. When we are out in the public, we have a different personality, right? We want to be able to showcase who we are in public, right? We want to project this image of who we are. Like you said, when we hang out with folks, we all want to be goofballs, right? So like the coach said, these are all knuckleheads coming together.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is time for that. I think for us that are in the political arena, sometimes we fail to realize that we have to it's almost like theater. I hate to say this, but I mean, you see this a lot in even like the attorneys, the judges, district court judges. They have to put on their cape to come into a courtroom
right.
where they have this seat and they preside over a hearing, right? And then you have your jury and you have your attorneys, and they're all projecting this image of like, this person is innocent because here you go. Let me showcase his personality. Then you have that person that goes home and wants to be with his family, his private life. And that's a different personality. So sometimes I feel like, going back to what you said, it depends on your audience, but I think we tend to do that. We want to project who we think we are based on the environment that we're in. Would you agree with that?
I think it's necessary, and I'll leverage it over to or pass the ball over to Rohi to kind of elaborate. But and I'll add this, Rohi. Some people may consider that being fake. Oh, you're fake. That's not really you. We know the real you, and usually that type of criticism is coming from a close family member who's known you for some time, or a friend who sees you in those lax environments that you have, right? So. Do you feel it's fair for them to call you fake? If not, why is that necessary?
I mean, I would say that, I get what, Jose is saying is that, obviously you get into certain arenas where you have to put on a face. I mean, like, I'd like to think that anybody watching the show today understands, like, this is us. This is not, what you get into is, at some point, like you're saying, is the people who know you, especially Madera's a small town. I think that we can always look at anybody and say, like, I know that guy. Like, I hang out with him on a Friday night. That's not who he really is, right? But is it necessarily a bad thing? No. I mean, I think in certain environments, just like when we go to work, I have the professional me. That's who I have to be. I can't be the goofy guy when somebody, customers coming in and trying to buy a gun, and I'm like this, whatever goofy guy. Like, I have to have the professional me, So I think it's whatever the environment is calling for that to get the work done. If we're going into some negotiation and like we're just the goofy guys, like we're just going to take you serious, and you're not going to get the work done. So
I appreciate that. And when you look at the political arena, though. You see people in three-piece suits. You see them like, for some reason, society feels like these people are the most respected people. They are out there. They're intelligent. They're smarter than us. So therefore, we're going to empower them by giving them our vote or giving them our, they're going to represent me. And come to find out that a lot of times people around that table, you'd be, damn, I'm really surrounded by people that. Shit, man, I figured they'd be a lot more intelligent. And I'm not saying what we see here in our communities, but it's kind of like what's going on, and you see this in the political arena today, especially with what's going on back in Washington, D.C. You see it sometimes here in the state. It's always them versus us. And it's like a football game, right? It's like the Niners versus the Raiders. You're either here or you're not. And it's hard to convert a Raider fan into a 49er fan. I mean, how?
Almost impossible.
Right? It's or a Cowboy fan, for example,
it's
right?
Any team almost.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
impossible.
So, I mean, can you come to the middle and say, well, hey, can we agree that we enjoy football? Can we agree that Sundays are gatherings and we can respectfully see this and enjoy a good game because there's going to be family, food, good camaraderie? It's like almost you can't do that in this arena today. But again, that personality, that persona that you project is telling your constituency that, hey, I am for you. I'm going to stick it for you. But truthfully, outside of that, then you get caught up in something that is contrary to what you're saying. And you see that a lot. So I think here in our local politics that we see, people see you at the grocery store. People know that our jobs, we're not getting paid high dollars, but rather, we're out there. We have jobs. We have full-time jobs. We don't have career politician, jobs. You have a business. you work, you have a business, I have a business, and we try to project that also because we have to gain customers for our business, and we have to provide a good, friendly customer service face. But come church day or come golf day, hey, we need to be lax too. We can't be that professional deal. I mean, we always want to be professional, but there's times where we have to switch it. There's a switch that goes on and off, and I wonder if people realize that sometimes we're not always that if you have a hero or if you have a representative that you like, that they're always going to be like that. When on contrast, you hear different.
I think you run into that with people that run into celebrities. They have this perception of who this person's going to be, and they're all excited. Hey, and they're like, "Get the heck away from me!" Like, what do you know?
Yeah, this is a normal Tuesday afternoon, and I'm just trying to get my sandwich. Like, leave me alone. I'm not James Bond right now. But there's a million memes that are going through my head right now, and it's like mostly like the whole it is. We do stereotype, right? And so, while some will consider it a stereotype, it is a real perception. That's how we see you. That's how we correlate you. The memes I'm thinking about right now are, if your lawyer has these shoes on, or if your lawyer's suit looks like this, you're going to jail, And it's like, real baggy, faded, shredded at the bottom, slacks, or the shoes are leaning to the side and, real beat up. And so, imagine yourself in the courtroom and you get your, public defender coming, or your appointed, public defender coming in, and all of a sudden they're like, looking sloppy. You're like, oh man, that guy's not going to win, or girl, or whatever, right? So there is certainly a comfort that we get from people within respected roles, and usually it's like, man, if they can take the time to comb their hair, look presentable, they have a clean shirt on, then they must have things together, or if they're dirty, grungy, that might associate them with being unorganized, not on time, whatever, those things they don't know how to prioritize. So how can I trust them with this service, right?
But it's funny you say that, because all it takes for us to be conditioned to believe that this person is very trustworthy and will take you to the top or win a case is button up your shirt, groom yourself well, and put on a suit.
Yeah.
And that person looks like a winner. And right, and not only that, I mean, you may go to and this is why sales is such a big thing, right? So when you go and buy a car, you don't see people out there coming out in jeans and what have you, and shorts, and trying to sell you a car. You see them very presented, sometimes with the tie. Let me show you. They have details on the vehicle. Same thing with any real estate agent. You see them very professionally dressed and groomed. And even in our industries, when we do lending, right? I mean, who wants to come to someone that doesn't really groom themselves? And sometimes, I get lax to the point where, well, I have a lot of knowledge already. I mean, do I have to go through this theater thing to present to you what I have? I'm willing to help you. I want to help you. I want to give you good information so you can make informed decisions. But do I need to be in that suit? Do I need to have that robe, or do I need to have that 3-piece suit in order to convince you that I have that? And unfortunately, a lot of times it seems like you have to. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm trying to advocate for, hey, just come see me as a casual Friday all the time, right? Because I think we do have to. It's part of our sales technique, right? We have to provide service. We have to at least let people know that we are very professional. In your profession, Rohi, I'm not sure if people expect you to be in a suit or expect you to be just a very down-to-earth individual. How do you perceve that when?
I would say that. I mean, obviously, like my store compared to somebody else's store is much different. I mean, obviously, having the security side and having the guns is a, the two kind of would contradict each other, because the security side you'd want professional, and you would kind of want the more suit and tie. But I would say that when you're trying to make initial sales, like you're saying, it's gaining their trust. So. And also maybe not an intimidation factor. I mean, I think, like, if I was the atypical store of, like having metal music playing in the background, and I'm just like, I got like these buff guys with guns all over them, and they're like, hey, what do you want? I think that's average experience is like, I don't want to be there. I'm going to get out of here, versus going to like maybe the Sportsman's or the big box store of, like you said, like they got the nice shirt and it's tucked in and it's, hey, how can I help you? You know, more inviting to the scenario. So,
well, but it's depending on who you're catering to, right? Or
correct.
who you're
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to attract. If
Yeah.
you're trying to attract we have a big, biker shop down the street, and like we have these big burly guys that want to come hang out, and hey, light up the hookah, and we'll look at some options. That might be their option, but then with that comes all that riffraff, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to, I see your store as hey. We're here for the local community, defense shop, we got security, so it's more so to those people who are not,
I'm not going to capture everybody.
Yeah,
for
sure.
At all of them.
Yeah, blue collar, maybe, just coming in, wanting to say, hey, I just want to protect my family. But I mean, do you get a lot of people in 3-piece suits coming in there trying to buy? And I'm not saying
Not
that you
necessarily,
don't,
yeah.
but I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, but again, like to your point, is when they're coming in is on their Friday, or their casual day. They're going to come in and maybe ask those questions. They're not going to come from like their professional business and be like, hey, I just got done with my sales. By the way, I'm going to buy a gun.
But you get what I'm saying is that they know when to take that off, take that other suit off, and say, you know what, I'm just gonna be myself today.
Yeah.
I hope to just come in there, do my shopping, do what I got to do, and go back home.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would probably resonate with that. But it's funny that when it comes to any type of profession, whether it's politics or a career or your business, what have you, or even these white-collar jobs, I mean, every one of them seems to be very smart in economics for some reason. The CEOs you see up there, I mean, but it's because we project them to be there because of the categorization that we give them based on, well, they look very successful. They seem to know what they're doing. Hey, we had a mortgage crisis, but they sure as hell know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You're losing your house, but they know what they're doing.
Well, I work for one of the biggest banks. I can't say the name. One of the biggest banks here in the nation, and business banking is what I do now. And the sentiment behind the way you're expected to dress is a suit, right? Because that's the image that we portray. But here in California, it is you meet your clients and you get invited to dress down, right? So once you get the invitation to dress down, then it's acceptable. Then the jeans, you can wear your boots out to the farm, whatever it might be. But the first impressions are everything, right? And it's like a business owner might not feel this way, but you never want them to feel like, man, what's this guy doing just showing up like this, looking like that, trying to, manage my, portfolio of money or whatever, right? So you show up and it's like, here I am, I'm your banker. Hey, man, don't be dressing like that out here. You're going to get dirty, right? Oh, cool. Okay. Next time I come out here, now the expectation, they've already seen that first impression. Now it's, now go ahead and dress to your audience, right? But I think because we're still in that, I think it's appropriate in especially business to put your best foot forward on that first and that first interaction, that first impression. It does go a long way.
So back to your question: are you faking it to try to get that sale? I mean, are we faking it when we come before the people and we try to gain their trust in something? Because, as you mentioned, I'm trying to make a really good impression of myself. Yes.
No, I think when I said faking it, people will misunderstand the difference in your attitude as, oh, you're faking it. And it's like, no, I'm not faking it. I'm just not here to BS with this person. They didn't invite me for an hour of their time to sit here and talk about all the BS that we talk about at the barbecue, right? We're turned off there, right? So here, this environment, we showed up to the mixer, we showed up to the council meeting, we showed up to this with an agenda in mind, right? Yeah. And so out of respect for everybody's time, we're going to stick to those topics, right? It would be the same, I guess if, this is your family member talking, it'd be like, well, hey, it's just like if we were having a family meeting, right? We would show up, it'd be a little bit more serious, we'd get to the point, and we'd get to the solutions to whatever problems exist, rather than, BSing, right? Because we know everybody's, being a little sensitive, so.
No, and I totally understand. And the one example I would say is, for example, you have someone like a scientist or a physicist like Albert Einstein that, hair all come down. But this guy was one of the, a genius, right? Smartest guys, that developed the theory of relativity and all these other theories that they pursue today. But I mean, the intelligence of that person, I mean, did he have to elevate himself to dress a certain way to believe what he was trying to tell you? Or was it backed by his data that he had to show the world, the science community, that this is what I can bring to you based on, you know, these studies and these theories that I have, whether they're nuclear, what have you, whether it was Oppenheimer, whatever. I'm just saying in general, I mean, sometimes we tend to focus on shiny stuff because it looks good, not knowing what's underneath it. Does that make sense?
Well, there's always diamonds in the rough, you know, and it's like, it's always easier to tell the amazing story or come up story after we know the result, right? After we know Einstein's Einstein, then it's like, man, look at how he had his hair and he didn't care and he was super cool and, you know, this and that, all those stories kind of come out. But you know, how many people were probably just as intelligent as Einstein, but didn't maybe have the social connections or weren't put in the right places or didn't take advantage of opportunities to be able to further, you know, their ability to learn, right? And so, you know, I don't, you know, obviously Einstein wasn't born with that knowledge. He continued to pursue opportunities in order to increase his ability to learn and apply, you know, and obviously his, you know, he did have natural brain capacity to be able to articulate everything, be able to solve everything and then articulate it. So, you know, that was certainly his God-given talents there, but I'm sure there was a lot of meetings and interviews and, you know, one-on-one interactions where he had to turn it up. And, you know, as an old man, his hair was wild, but I'm sure, you know, as a young man coming up through the ranks, he was nice and buttoned up. So.
No, I think that's where artists, again, like the music artists nowadays, they have the hardest times because they were not that person, they, you know, and then they built themselves into this image, and now they start pigeonholing of this is my industry, this is my music, so I'm gonna start dressing and acting a certain way, and I think to some degree it overtakes their lives to where like they don't get the switch. Like when they go home, they are that person still, like, you know, the people hang around them, like this is them, you know.
And you see that like from the Rolling Stones, right? You have this guy that's almost 80 years old, and he still dresses like a rocker, right? I mean, no offense, but I mean, it's. I mean, at what point do you say, or even like, for example, this is no hit on any of these older performers, but you see like these 1970 rock bands that are still putting out somewhat of a show here and there. Again, it's their theater performance, right? I'm sure they probably go home, the paint comes off, everything's like, hey, I'm just a normal guy. But I mean, like you said, it's hard to turn that off when you've gained all this popularity and you've gained, this is what people know you for, right? I mean, aside from your private life, this is what they know you for.
Well, this was the whole like Taylor Swift thing, is we knew her as the great artist and, you know, this singer or whatever, and then they put her in the football stadium and it's like, oh, we get to see her. She, you know, she's a real person. Oh, she laughs, and oh, she can enjoy a game. And it's like, yeah, I mean, she's human. She's a person, like, you know.
So that'll kind of segue into we talked about. I know.
Sure.
April had mentioned that he works for a big bank, but we talk about banks and we talk about maybe the rise in fraud that we're seeing. Yeah. And that's kind of, I know how we got to this, right? I mean, because there may be some fraud out there with some personality that you have to be careful with, right?
Sure.
And for us, I mean, I'm trying to sell myself today because I'm actually dressed down today. That's probably why this topic took a longer time than normal. But tell us, what do you see right now? I think you had brought up an interesting point regarding some fraud that's taking place.
Yeah, so I mean, we, in one of our business accounts had gotten a large deposit withdrawn from our account it's a Tokyo Marine North America Services, which is, funny enough, they're financial services, or at least that's what they say on paper. And so, you know, obviously with a business, you got a lot of moving parts and money's coming and going. We thought, oh, okay, you know, the place looks legitimate, whatever. Having to call the bank, and they're like, oh yeah, this is fraud. Like, you know, we're getting calls on this company, it's fraud. And what was, you know, scary about it is, for one, like, there was no detection in place. There was no, like, hey, this company doesn't normally take this much money out of you, you know, like you would, you know, kind of get maybe from like a credit card warning, right? It was just kind of like, boop, it's gone. If you didn't notice it, too bad for you, you know? Yeah. And then, you know, so we're dealing with that early in the morning, and then towards the end of the day, one of my last customers came in, and, you know, he's trying to, you know, do his payment for his purchase. He's like, yeah, I don't know if my card's going to go through. I'm like, oh, really? What's going on? Oh, my account just got drained. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, that, you know, we just kind of had the same thing. And but we're calling, we're going to hopefully get our money back. And he's like, yeah, I already talked to the bank, we're only going to get about half.
Wow.
And it was just concerning because, as we were talking before, it's just kind of, where does the liability fall? Like, if somebody's draining my account and I didn't give them permission, where's my protections? Where do I get protected by a bank? So that was kind of the concerning thing. Maybe check your bank accounts. Maybe these things are kind of going on.
No, and you're right. When you have a heavy volume of transactions, it's very hard to catch those type of things. And coming from the bank perspective, I have I'm not, I've never been a teller or anybody, at the bank seeing, a lot of transactions. But as I'm working with businesses, one of the biggest things that businesses do, request or require is that their funds get released quickly, right? Money's not being held up. Yeah. And so, with that, the problem with that though is you get things like that where there's no we don't want to disrupt this business and put a hold on this and disrupt that transaction. Because we might call you and say, yeah, I need those funds, release them, sure. Or yeah, I'm trying to buy this, release those funds, and so it could be kind of a pinch point right there where, but that is a very real issue. And I can advise, most businesses or even individuals, that's where the power of the credit card comes in. And, you run your transactions on your credit card rather than your debit card because you can literally have your whole checking wiped out if they get access to that debit card. And with all these fancy gadgets, tap to pay, people could wave a wand next to your booty. You have your wallet back there and take your information. Yeah. That's where, and now you're having to deal with this. Now you're saying, well, I hope my bank refunds me all the way. And then, of course, the bank can't just, take your word for it. They also have to do an investigation. Yeah. And that may take several days. And if you're running a business where that month might be a little tight, that might disrupt your cash flow quite a bit, right? So having a credit card dedicated to your daily expenses will help mitigate that by adding just that buffer or that wedge between your bank account and the funds that are out in the public.
Let me ask you this though, Abel. Like in regards to I guess traditional banking, when one of the reasons when PayPal first came around that I kind of latched onto them quick. When it came to e-commerce and the threat of like you're saying, scams and all this stuff, PayPal was a bank and PayPal was that intermediary to kind of say, okay, you're making a payment. We know the funds are here and we're also going to give to this person. And then, but they always added that protection of, let's say I didn't get my stuff or, let's say that there was an issue with it and I can't get a hold of this guy. They were always that person to still have an ability to revoke the funds or to kind of step in. Why does traditional banking seem like it's not really there? It's more of, like you said, where, well, you told us to send it and we sent it and, well, you can't get, they didn't follow through on the deal. Well, too bad.
Right.
So, I mean, why do you not see, how is PayPal, I guess, able to do that business model, but the big guys aren't,
Yeah, I don't know the the exact answer, but as I'm kind of hearing that scenario, I would just take a crack at the idea or the concept that speed of service is the priority, right? Sure. And if we're holding up funds here, then you have kind of this chain effect of when at what point do they get. And it becomes more of a customer service issue, right? And on the PayPal end, I'll have to look at their model, but I know it's kind of like that prepaid, right? So it's I'm loading up funds here, and then I'll have to look into that.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I know in the early days, obviously, like you're saying, is I had to put the money into the PayPal account, and that was kind of what we have now, with Venmo and all these other things, where there's a separate bank account-ish kind of thing, but PayPal, I mean, I could buy something still, not have funds in the account, pulls from my bank account, and still have those added protections. And the person on the other end still gets the money instantly. If I PayPal Jose right now $10, it's in 2 seconds he's got the money. Yeah. But it was just like I said, it's the concerning part of the mechanism where if it was if I send it by accident or Jose doesn't follow through on whatever our deal happened to be, I can call PayPal and they'd be like, okay, yeah, Jose, did you follow up on your deal, show us proof. No, okay, well then we're taking it back out of your account.
Right.
So that's kind of like I said, it's always been my concern with the traditional of, like you said, of having, because you're in a business, that's kind of where I want to have my lump money because that's where I need to move it. But at the same time, it's like I don't, because somebody can just walk in and say, okay, $50,000, and then the bank goes like, well, we don't know how to get your money back.
And I think there may be a distinction there where banks are taking in money, deposits, to lend out money, right? Because they only have to keep a certain amount of reserve, right, balance. Whereas PayPal and these other Visas or third-party services, they're not in the business of holding money. They're in the business of making a transaction fee.
Sure.
And for them, I think it's easier to say, hey, if this transaction happened, we'll take care of it, because we don't want to lose our reputation with how we deal these particular matters. So one of the things that I will say, especially from this group, is that obviously we hold some finance background, and I don't mean professionally, but in our personal lives. Yeah. But we've also, just through life. I mean, I'm 49. Rohi, you're what, 33?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So we've been through a couple of hurdles, right? So one thing that you'll gain from this particular show today is that there'll be some financial advice that I may, or Abel or Rohi may want to give, and that's when it comes to credit cards. How are they different from debit cards, right? And this is one thing that I'll give you, and this is worth a lot of money if you want to add money to it, because it will help you. This is where we're trying to help our community as well. But establishing a credit card that will take care of all of your expenses throughout the month and paying it off at the end of the month is by far one of the superior ways of utilizing and managing your credit. Now, one would say, well, why don't I just use my debit card? Well, anywhere you go, use your debit card, especially if you're pulling money out. You're having to pay a fee. You're exposing your accounts. And in many cases, this is what happens. People use their debit card, and voila, next thing you know, well, somebody did an ACH, somebody took money from here, and it's linked to other accounts, right? Because they have your information there. A credit card, on the other hand, it's only that credit amount and that credit limit. And most of the times, whether it's Visa, Discover, American Express, they're very good about resolving your issue pretty quickly, a lot faster than a bank would. And I can tell you that from personal experience. But one thing you don't do is you don't expose your accounts. And you gain credit. This is the one card or the one mechanism that allows you to get money. You get money back, you get cash back, you get miles, whatever you want to call it. If you want to get airline miles, if you want to get cash back, if you want to get discounts, by doing the same thing you would do with the debit card, you're doing it with the credit card. And that's power, because if you can, for example, if I'm out shopping for groceries, I typically use my debit card. I have the money to do it. I can't go to a grocery store and shop with my debit card and not have money. You have to have money. So it's no different. All you're doing is replacing the debit with your credit with money that you already have. So whatever you're spending, this is where the discipline comes in. Yeah. You definitely want to be disciplined in saying, well, I'm going to use my credit card as I would my debit card. If that's paying all of your bills, that's fine. At the end of the month, you have an amount, accumulated amount of maybe $1,000. You would do the same with the debit card. You pay it off. Guess what? You just earned all that cash at the end of the year, or however they want to pay that out, but you've also increased your credit. And in this world, anything you want to finance, especially in today's day and age, it's about having credit. And this is how you establish your credit, is just by doing that. You don't need 5, 6 credit cards. You know, the myth that I see of a lot of people is that I got to establish credit. I have to have 7 or 8 cards, and I got to max them out so that I can show them that I have credit. No, that's actually really poor credit. That's not utilizing the credit card in the most effective way. So I had to learn that the hard way. And I'm telling you that I think once you get old and you have all these road miles, I think you start figuring out these bumps in life that teach you, hey, well, learn why the people that are probably the most wealthy or people that are very well off is because they do this. So if you're seeing this for the first time, know that we're not just jargoning out here. We're actually providing good advice, and I hope that you learn something from this. Is that if you are one of those that utilizes the debit card, consider using a credit card that offers cash back, that gives you good benefits, and at the end of the year, hey, you benefit.
I've always talked about them, but Robinhood is taking that to the next level. Part of their gold card, I don't know if you've seen the promotions on that, but what Robinhood's been trying to get people to do is to add on top of what you're saying as far as the cash back, because I think they're at 3% on whatever purchase you make. But what they're trying to get you is what he's probably seen it before, which is take my paycheck, deposit it into Robinhood, make my purchases, but my money that's sitting until I pay off my credit card is also accumulating more interest than your traditional bank is, where right now your regular savings checking account is probably getting 0.00 something % in interest. They're giving still their 4%. So they're trying to get into people a different model of saying, okay, first off, take your $1,000 paycheck deposit on the first of the month whenever you get it, make your payments. So now you're getting 3% on your credit card purchase, and then until you make that payment at the end of the month to pay off your purchases, you've also accumulated 4% on that $1,000, which, when it's small, it's probably not adding up, but the accumulation of the 3% on the credit card purchase and the 4% on the money that was sitting in the bank, at 7%, it's actually quite a bit of money especially as a business, if you're churning this over where you're saying, okay, I'm going to start putting all my money into the bank, letting it accumulate, and then paying off just the credit card. So they're obviously, the scary part is they're trying to take from your traditional bank, obviously.
Right.
But with the added protection of still that credit card. So I can kind of use it as a debit card to some degree, but have the credit card protection. So.
I would say there's, well, first before I move on, if you're a business owner and you're looking for a business credit of any sort, contact me directly. Yeah. I can satisfy that need. Plug myself in there, but I will say also there's a lot of new banking solutions that are starting to come about, and they've existed for a while now. And in the mortgage side, we saw something as you were talking, like your all-in-one deal, right? Where you're doing the same exact thing. You're parking while your money's parked there. It's doing something, right? You're applying it somehow, whether that be to a principal balance to reduce the amount of interest that you're paying, which is saving you money, or to your point, you're being given almost like a fluid CD, where you're getting some money back while it's parked there, being rewarded for parking money there and saving money, right? But all of it, regardless of what tool or vehicle you're utilizing, it all requires that discipline. That discipline of understanding how it works. So make sure that you're really getting the roadmap on how it works, how it could benefit you, and then also understanding the other routes where it's like, yeah, this is how it benefits me, but what happens if I make a left turn instead of a right turn, right? What does that road lead to, and then how do I get out of it? Kind of having kind of an escape plan for that. As Jose was talking about, the power of a credit card for personal use and personal finances. I think about the community members here in Madera, where the Madera Unified is one of our largest employers here in the city of Madera, and their employees are only paid once a month, right? So that could be a huge tool to help you with your cash flow throughout the month. I have family members that are work for the district, and the joke is always like, well, I got one more week, I got to get make this last, and so it's like, well, look, you're getting this money, it's already coming, and if you had that credit card, you don't have to put off getting groceries for your family a week. You can go ahead and do that, knowing that you can pay off that balance. On the second of the month, because you get paid on the first. So anyway, great tools. If you guys have any ideas out there or have seen something that might benefit the viewers, throw it in the comment box, shoot us a message. We can do a little bit of research on it, and maybe have it as a topic for our next conversation.
Yeah, we certainly would like to bring more of these topics. I think alongside what you talked about regarding leveraging, there is a mortgage out there that can do that, but that's a different conversation. Seek out for some advice. I'd love to help you out. And see
notice how
you
said seek.
Well, I mean,
seek
out. Yeah, seek out for advice. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this for quite some time. I have a lot of knowledge that I can provide to help you maybe carve a path for you, especially for home ownership or some financial advice. Again, through my own personal journey, I think we've been there. Rohi, you and I have always talked about that, and alongside Abel regarding how we try to navigate in this economic environment that we're in. But the good news is that we're here every week, and we'll be providing more and more information as we go. But again, if you first time, like, subscribe, throw us your topics, let us know what you want us to talk about, and we'll certainly do that.
All right, Rohi, any closing statements?
No, just make sure you check those statements for any activity
There
that you
you
don't
go.
know about.
Yeah.
It's serious. And then,
Yeah, I would say the power of the mobile app. Now you can access all of your transaction instantly. You can get alerts. Set your alerts to a lower number, and although those little pings might be annoying, it's always kind of, especially on your personal side, it's always kind of nice to know, kind of what's going on, or what transactions are hitting. Sometimes you buy something off Amazon and it's like a third-party payment, and you're like, what is that? And it's like, oh, it's the, socks I bought from China or something.
Yeah.
So at 100% tariff. So anyway, follow us, like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, tell your mom, let her know that we're on during the week when right after Wheel of Fortune.
So if you're looking for a good idea in a business, it's no longer the dollar store. It could be the $2 store with the tariffs now. So